Mara almost turned back when she reached the cafe door. The reflection in the glass caught her at the wrong angle, tired eyes, hair flattened by the wind, and the old coat hanging heavier than it should have. The button near the collar was loose again. She pressed it flat with her thumb, as if that might fix everything else, and reminded herself she was only early because she'd walked instead of taking the bus. Walking was cheaper. Walking was safer. Inside, the cafe glowed warm and loud, all clinking cups and low laughter. She hesitated just long enough to feel foolish, then pushed the door open. Heat rushed over her, fogging her glasses for a second. She wiped them quickly, scanning the room. He stood when he saw her. Evan was taller than she remembered from his photo, shoulders relaxed, smile unsure in a way that made it feel real. He lifted a hand, half wave, half question. For a moment, she forgot about the coat, the frayed cuff, the careful way she'd learned to take up as little space as possible. Mara? He asked. That's me, she said, forcing a smile that didn't quite know where to settle. They ordered drinks, exchanged the small, necessary facts, traffic, the weather, how crowded the place was getting. Normal things. Easy things. Still, she stayed aware of her coat the entire time, keeping it on even though the cafe was warm. Taking it off felt like an invitation to be evaluated. To be found lacking. She noticed his jacket draped casually over the back of his chair, newer, thicker, unmarked by time. The comparison slipped in uninvited, sharp and familiar. She folded her hands in her lap, willing herself not to apologize for existing. You okay? Evan asked suddenly, his voice soft, not accusing. She looked up, startled. Yeah. Why? You went quiet, he said. I just wanted to make sure I didn't say something wrong. Something about that, about him checking instead of assuming, eased the knot in her chest. No, she said honestly. I do that sometimes. He nodded, accepting the answer without prying. They talked then, really talked, about books and bad movies and the strange comfort of routine. Minutes passed without her counting them. She almost forgot about the coat. Almost. When they stood to leave, she felt it again, the weight of it, the story it told without asking her permission. She braced herself, smoothing the sleeve, preparing for the shift she'd learned to expect. She didn't know yet that this was only the beginning. That the coat would matter, but not in the way she feared. They stepped out of the cafe together, the door swinging shut behind them with a soft chime that felt more final than it should have. Night had settled in while they talked, the streetlights glowing amber against the damp pavement. Mara instinctively pulled her coat closer, even though the air wasn't cold yet. It was habit more than need, armor she'd worn long enough to forget how to take off. Do you want to walk for a bit? Evan asked. My car's that way, but I'm not in a rush. She hesitated, then nodded. Sure. I like walking. That wasn't entirely true. Walking meant time. Time meant chances for things to go wrong. But she fell into step beside him anyway, their shoulders almost touching, the space between them charged with awareness. They walked past closed shops and lit windows, past a bookstore still open, warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. Mara slowed unconsciously, drawn to it. You read a lot? Evan asked, noticing. She smiled, surprised. Yeah, it's cheaper than therapy. He laughed, not too loud, not dismissive. That's painfully accurate. Something loosened then. She told him about the library she'd practically grown up in, about borrowing the maximum number of books on a single card. He told her about moving too often as a kid, how stories were the only constant. Their words wove together easily, like they'd practiced this rhythm somewhere else. A breeze slipped down the street, sharper now. Mara's shoulders tightened. She felt the thinness of her coat betray her, the cold sneaking in at the seams. She didn't say anything. She never did. Evan noticed anyway. You cold? He asked. She shook her head too quickly. I'm fine. He glanced at her, then ahead, as if filing the answer away. He didn't push. The gesture mattered more than she expected. They reached a small park, bare trees rattling softly above them. The path curved, and for a moment, the city noise faded. Mara realized she was relaxed, actually relaxed. The thought startled her. This is nice, she said quietly. Yeah, Evan agreed. I'm glad you said yes. The words settled warm in her chest, even as the air cooled further. She wondered when she'd start waiting for the turn, for the moment the evening shifted and she became something inconvenient. As they walked on, the night deepening around them, Mara had no way of knowing how close that moment was, or how wrong she was about what it would bring. By the time they reached the quiet stretch along the river, the sky had darkened to a bruised shade of purple. Mara had just started to feel the rhythm of the conversation when the first fat drops of rain hit her face. She looked up, startled, and then down at her old coat, already damp at the shoulders. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of wet concrete and autumn leaves, and she realized she hadn't brought an umbrella. "Oh no," she muttered, pulling the coat tighter around her. "I didn't think it would rain." Evan laughed softly, the sound warm and unhurried. "Neither did I." He paused, glancing at the clouds rolling above them. "Do you want to head back?" She shook her head, embarrassed. "No, it's fine. I can manage." The life felt familiar, and she hated it immediately. She didn't want him to see how easily she faltered, how the coat, already a shield, wasn't enough to protect her from everything. The rain grew heavier, turning from a gentle drizzle to something sharper. Mara shivered, teeth clenched, and realized her fingers were numb despite the wool wrapping her. She tried to adjust her coat, smooth it over her arms, but it was old, worn thin in places, and offered little real defense. Evan noticed. He didn't ask if she was cold, didn't comment on the coat. He simply reached into his bag, pulled out a folded umbrella, and opened it with a soft click. "Here," he said, holding it over both of them. "You don't have to get soaked." Mara blinked, stunned. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he replied, stepping closer so the umbrella covered her completely. His coat brushed hers as he moved, a small barrier against the chill. "Besides," he added with a grin, "you shouldn't have to face this alone." She felt warmth creep into her chest that had nothing to do with the umbrella. The embarrassment about her coat, the fear of seeming small or inadequate, started to melt away. Here he was treating her as if she belonged in the rain, as if she deserved comfort, as if she mattered simply because she existed. For a moment, Mara forgot the rain, the damp, the frayed wool. She focused on the way he had anticipated her needs without a word, how natural it felt to be near him despite the chaos around them. The umbrella shielded more than just her body, it protected the fragile hope she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. And for the first time that evening, she allowed herself to relax fully, stepping alongside him under the small canopy, listening to the rain drum softly on the umbrella, and imagining, just for a moment, that maybe she wouldn't be left behind after all. The wind cut sharper as they stepped out onto the empty street. Mara hugged her old coat around her tighter, the fabric thin and worn, the seams fraying where years of use had taken the toll. She glanced at Evan out of the corner of her eye, her heart tightening. She knew that look, the one that made her feel exposed, as if he could see every imperfection she tried to hide. She braced herself. This was the moment she had anticipated, the moment he would notice, judge, and walk away. Instead, he stopped. Slowly, deliberately, he slipped off his own coat. Mara's eyes widened. "Evan, you don't have to," she began, voice tight with panic. "I know," he said softly, cutting her off without harshness, without judgment. "But I want to." Before she could protest again, he stepped closer and wrapped the coat around her shoulders. The weight of it was surprising, warm, solid, protective. Mara froze, unsure how to respond. It wasn't pity. It wasn't condescension. It was simple, quiet care. "You'll be cold," she whispered, more to herself than to him, her throat tight. "I'll be fine," he replied, a gentle smile tugging at his lips, steady and certain. She looked down at the coat enveloping her, noticing how it didn't hide her but rather acknowledged her. It acknowledged her presence. She realized she had been bracing herself for rejection, for judgment, for the worst, but none of that had come. Instead, there was warmth, and presence, and acceptance. "I thought," she began, shaking her head, words failing. "What?" he asked, his eyes patient, unhurried. "I thought you'd leave," she admitted, voice low. Because of this, she gestured vaguely at the coat, at the worn fabric that had always made her feel smaller, inadequate. He studied her for a long moment, not judging, not offering empty reassurance, just looking. "Because of a coat?" he asked, almost gently teasing, but his eyes were kind. "Not the coat," she said softly, what it means." He nodded slowly, understanding without needing everything explained. "It means you were cold," he said simply. "And now you're not." The wind howled around them, indifferent and biting, but she felt anchored, secure in the quiet intimacy of his gesture. For the first time in a long while, Mara realized that someone could see her exactly as she was, and stay. And maybe, she thought, just maybe, she didn't have to hide anymore.